Shalom. This is Apostle Betsy. Today we continue to talk about salvation, how to maintain your salvation, and how to walk with God. The last time we spoke about individuals who did not please God in their walks. We reflected a little bit on the reasons why they fell in an attempt to learn from the mistakes they made so that we don't do the same. Today, I'd like to change the focus and talk about individuals who please God. And hopefully, we can learn the characteristics that they displayed so that we can learn to do the same as they did. Now, I believe there's no better place to start than with Enoch. Unfortunately, we don't read a lot about Enoch in our Bibles, but I would like to encourage you to read some extra biblical text about this magnificent ancestor of ours, Enoch. But we do read about him in Genesis 5, verse 24, and I read, Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Hallelujah. Enoch was a person who didn't die. God took him. God found him to be a righteous man, and God took him. The other person who never died was Elijah, who ascended to heaven in a whirlwind. So, what was the quality of Enoch? He was a righteous man, and so he pleased God through his righteousness. The next person I'd like to mention is Noah. And I'd like you, as we go through these individuals, pick up the qualities that these individuals displayed. In Genesis 6, we read about the flood, and we read that Noah was a righteous man. He was not just righteous, he was also a man who believed in God, who had faith in what God told him. God explained to Noah his plans of destroying the generation at Noah's time who were in moral decline. They did not please God. And God instructed Noah to build an ark to keep him and his family safe. Now, Noah lived far away from the sea, and building an ark, a boat, must have been the most strange thing. But in faith, Noah believed what God said and built the ark. So he had faith in God and he was obedient to the instructions received from God. Another person who had faith was Abraham. God made beautiful promises to Abraham that he will have descendants as a multitude of descendants like the sand of the sea, and a place where his descendants will be settled, a place of milk and honey. These were promises God made to Abram, and God instructed Abram to leave his father's home. Abraham believed God, had faith, and acted in obedience to the instruction of God. And so in these individuals, we see righteousness, we see faith, we see obedience. But David, the faith that David displayed, I believe is something that we should all strive to have. David had unshakable faith when he came up against Goliath. And he told Goliath, you come to me with your sword and your spear, but I come to you in the name of the God of Israel. Hallelujah. A small young shepherd boy coming up against the mighty man of war, Goliath. And through his faith, he overcame this mighty enemy. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. There were other characteristics that other people displayed. Last time we spoke about those who fell, and we said mainly one of the big reasons was pride. Pride. I'd like to mention two individuals here that showed the opposite of pride. The first one is King Jehosaphat, a king of Judah. When his land became surrounded with enemy armies, he humbled himself before God. He called for the leaders together, and they sought the face of God and asked God to help them. This is a man who did not rely on his own strength and his own understanding. This is a man who knew who God was, what God can do. And God came through for Jehoshaphat and his people in a miraculous way. Please read the story in 2 Chronicles 20. It is a wonderful thing when you see our God take up the fight on our behalf. And that is what he promised Jehoshaphat and what he did. The last one I want to mention is the king of Nineveh. Jonah, we know, was sent to Nineveh with a message that because of the moral decline of the people, God planned to destroy the city of Nineveh in 40 days. What the king did, the king ripped his clothes. The king put ashes on his head. He humbled himself. He called a fast. He instructed the people to turn away from sin. And God relented. The final example I want to bring is to demonstrate a further quality that we need called love. And this we find in Luke 10, verse 25, the parable of the Good Samaritan. When the Pharisees asked Jesus, "Who is my neighbor?" Jesus told them about the Good Samaritan. And we know why this was pleasing to Father is that this man saw an injured person on the side of the road, bound up his wounds, took him to a place of safety, paid for the expenses. That, Jesus said, is love. That is who one's neighbor is. So to sum up, in the Bible, we see good examples of people who display the characteristics that are pleasing to God. Characteristics that we need to display, that we need to acquire if we want to walk with God. Being humble. The word tells us that God despises the proud, but uplifts the humble. Being humble is critical in our walk with God, understanding the power of God, acknowledging the sovereignty of God, and seeking God in all that we encounter. Humility is a key characteristic. The other one is faith, knowing who God is, omnipotent, all powerful, almighty. Knowing who God is, trust God, trust His word, believe His word, His instructions, trust God, and act in obedience to God. Also, God has given us His commandments. We need to be obedient to walk in those commandments. As we've heard, Noah was a righteous man. Enoch was a righteous man. We need to walk in righteousness, and that we do when we follow the commandments God has given us. So walk in obedience to God and walk in love. So faith, obedience, righteousness, humility, and love. I will leave you at this point. I'll say shalom at this stage and invite you back for more next time. May the peace of our God be with you. Shalom.